All right, here we go. Give it a little clap. Welcome everyone. Very exciting. Behind the Replay, episode 5, recording on the Wednesday, the 17th of September. A little bit late this week, sorry. We are coming to you in a 2-part series that I will upload tomorrow that I haven't recorded yet, so that is maybe a false promise. But what I can promise you is today we have a very exciting topic because, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, non-binaries and transgenders, we on the weekend had an absolutely fantastic round of rugby, unless you're a Kiwi, because it was pretty tough being a Warriors fan and an All Blacks fan. There was some scintillating international rugby. There was Argentina pulling through against Australia, which I would usually talk about, which I will be talking about tomorrow once I actually watch it, because I haven't really watched a full replay of that, if I'm being honest. But the NRL playoffs started. There were 3 games, like I mentioned. The Warriors lost. It was a pretty okay game. There were some good things. Then we had the Sharkies and the Roosters. Again, pretty alright game. Nothing special. Then the game that I did in Melbourne, which was, you'd have to say, was a really good game. Melbourne versus the Bulldogs. Great. Awesome. That's not why we're here today. I'm not even going to talk about those, because there was something that happened on the weekend that I think was so historic that I will be talking about it for the next around hour. Because as a sports fan, which at this point, if you don't know who I am, I'm Noah Ventura, sports fanatic. There are certain moments, certain games you watch that stick in your mind forever. Certain things that you think, man, I've never seen anything like that. I'm going to be honest, this is the 5th time I've tried an introduction on this game because I get too emotional before I even start talking about this game. Because that game on Sunday, that was between the Canberra Raiders and the Brisbane Broncos, I've given it a lot of thought. I've gone through a lot of games. I've gone through a lot of research. I've thought about it constantly before I go to sleep. And I've come to a conclusion, guys. And I want you to listen very, very, very carefully, because I am meaning this. That was the best game of rugby league ever played on planet Earth. Ever. Okay? So I've said it. It's shocking. Yes, I know. Okay, let's walk through it. Okay, that's a big statement. Let's calm down a little bit. You know, flick the kettle on. Let's actually have a discussion about it. What do I mean by the greatest? Surely the greatest. I'm hearing counterpoints. I'm hearing counterpunches. Surely the greatest are grand finals, things with more on the line. And you're right. Okay, I think in terms of this, what I'm meaning is just a game of rugby league that if aliens came from Earth and they had no context about it, and you wanted to show them what the pinnacle of this sport is, you show them this game. That's how special that game was. And I know everyone thinks, man, that was a good game. No, I don't think people understand how historically great that game was. I'm going to go through it because I wrote out a list. Okay, Noah, what are the best games in your lifetime that you remember? So, with apologies to the 1997 and 1989 grand final, which I've got to be honest, I've seen highlights of, but I haven't actually watched the whole thing, but apparently those last century were the best. Okay, yeah, sure. So maybe I'm talking about the greatest game this century, which I mean, as well, because of the levels of athleticism that these new athletes have, sports science, so on and so forth. There's always the argument, and any sport that is, that this current generation is always going to be the best. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is just this generation. From my eyes, what do I think is the best games I've ever seen? Before this game that happened on Sunday, I thought it was the 2010 qualifying final, Tigers versus Roosters. This is the one that Sean Kenny-Dowell gets an intercept. It's the longest game of rugby league ever, I believe. The 99th minute, Sean Kenny-Dowell gets an intercept. This is the Braithen Nasta They've got to take it. They've got to take it now. Going back 40 out, which would have actually won them the game with modern standards, but because back then it wasn't a 2-point field goal. This is Simon Dwyer absolutely knocking the crap out of Jared Waerea-Hargreaves and just an unbelievable hit, like one of the best hits in rugby league history. Then there's a scrum with Tigers feed. All they need to do is get it out, and Frank Paul Nuisala drops on it. Still don't really know what happened. Still don't really know the rules around that one. It was just an all-time fairy tale game that ended in an insane intercept. I believe Robert Louis passed the ball. Sean Kenny-Dowell goes into the corner. It was a classic. Everyone thinks, if you know about this game, go watch it. 2010 qualifying final. This game on Sunday was better than that. I'm going to go into why. The other ones that came into mind was the second round of the playoffs in 2016, Cowboys versus Broncos. This is the year after the grand final. This is when Thurston fends off Sam Thade, goes inside with an insane flick pass in extra time to Michael Morgan. It should be noted as well, this is the first time that the rules had changed because the grand final the year before, which was also one of the greatest games of all time, which is also on my list, where Jonathan Thurston hits the winning field goal after hitting the post after Kyle Feldt scored in the corner in the last minute. This is the first game that both teams had to play out 5 minutes each half in extra time in the playoffs because the Broncos thought it was unfair that it was golden point instantly. So if you don't know the rules, after 90 minutes, it goes into golden point, which is what happened on Sunday. Both of those games were worse than this game. Not worse, just not as good as this game. Then you would have to say the 2023 grand final, Nathan Cleary's masterpiece. That one I think has an argument. I'm going to go into all why I think this one on Sunday is good. I'm just going through the list and I'm trying to go through my brain about what's right on this, yeah? So the other one, regular season 2009 Tigers versus Eels. This was Jared Hayne peak against Benji Marshall. I think that was also, this is the one where Jared Hayne scores an insane try. Benji Marshall came back with a flick pass to, I know this, I've got his face in my, it's one of his most famous tries. I've got the face, I can't remember. It wasn't Chris Lawrence, but it's kind of one of those players. It was Blake Ashford. Was it? It was Blake Ashford. One sec. I'm just checking. Yes, it was Blake Ashford. That's one of those tries, okay? So that is probably one of the greatest regular season tries of all time. Sorry, I'm not going to edit that out because you can listen to me struggle. The other one that came to mind was the seven sin bins, Chooks versus Roosters 2022, but that scoreline was out of the picture. That was the one that was crazy where Jared got sent. Everyone got sent. It was an Ashley Klein masterpiece, which we're going to get into as well because Sunday was an Ashley Klein masterpiece as well. Okay, so those are the games that first came to mind. And then I'm like, surely Origin, right? Surely Origin has some better games than that. And I was thinking, okay, no, what are the best games that you've seen? Okay, apart from the 2014, I think I've shown you guys, there's a mural of Trent Hawkinson going over in 2014 in Game 2, which, I mean, I think because of the storylines was one of the great games of all time, but I wouldn't say it was the greatest game of all time. So I was thinking, okay, what are the greatest Origin games of all time? And I would have to say the decider, not this year, last year, when the Blues came, when it was 2-0 at halftime, when the hits were just humongous, outrageous. Jerome Luai goes through, passes it to Brandon Best, and then Mitchell Moses. Because I'm a New South Wales fan, that was probably one of our best victories ever. That was probably one of the greatest games ever played on planet Earth. But because I like both sides. 2023, the year before, where Ben Hunt ran away, that at the time I thought was one of the greatest games I'd ever seen. So I'm not being biased. Both those games of the deciders in the last 2 years. You'd have to say also 2019 when Teddy goes over for a decider. Those 8 years that Queensland won, there were no good games because New South Wales were crap. Okay, slow down. I was getting a little bit too excited, a little bit too rugby league autistic. Let's bring it back. That game on Sunday was better than all of them. All of those ones that I just mentioned. And I will explain now why. So I was trying to think a little thought experiment. I was like, how do I put into perspective how insane this game was to the common person? And I was thinking, okay, what was the turning point of the match? The turning point was definitely the sin bin where Hudson Young initiated contact on Reece Walsh by getting in his face. Not initiated, that's the wrong word. I can't think of the word, but Reece Walsh came back with a headbutt. We will get into it. We will get into all that. That was the turning point, okay? That is when the game kind of changed. So I was watching the highlights on YouTube. And the highlight video on YouTube is 5 minutes 44 seconds. Okay, stick with me. Up until this point, this was the 53rd minute of the game. Okay, so there's 27 minutes left in the game up until this point. So 53 out of 80 of the game. 5/8 of the game had gone past. So 3/8 of the game is still left. Okay. So the thing about that though is that when that happened in the highlights, the best parts of the game, we were 52 seconds into the video. So 1/7 of the entire highlights were the first 52 minutes. Okay. And you're thinking, okay, well, yeah, what's the problem? The thing is, the first 52 minutes were absolutely insane. They were crazy, and the fact that they didn't even make 6/7 of the highlights is just proving my point of just how insane this freaking game was, man. It was an honor, a privilege, a pleasure to watch it. And okay, so I'm going to go through the first 52 minutes. And it was like, okay, well, what do you mean? Well, the Stags try in the sun, not only the crowd and everything, which was amazing. And by the way, I'm actually going down to Canberra this weekend, which I am so excited after seeing that crowd and doing the game against the Sharks. But the Stags try at the start, which was just the perfect start from Brisbane. Then Hudson Young off a beautiful Jamal Fogarty kick gets the second try. And then just Hudson Young just had his hands and his prints all over the first 52 minutes of this game, man. He was everywhere. What an immense player. I've always been a little bit side-eye of Hudson Young because I think he has a couple of clangers in his game, which he did, and which is the problem. Not even the problem, but it's a bit... I don't want to say it's the reason because he was the reason they were there, but man, like when it gets to this time, you need your footy IQ as high as it can be. And Hudson Young goes over for an insane little beautiful kick for Sebastian Kris, just absolutely skillful. And then Kyle Weeks and then Mariner scored after Ben Hunt, which we will also get into, passed the ball beautifully to Stags, who passed it back out. And that was until the defining moment of this game turning out to be, which we will also get to. This was Ben Hunt's, I would say, probably best thing that he did all night, because Ben Hunt in that game was terrible. And we will get into Ben Hunt. I promise we're going to get into everything. I am so excited to talk about this game, and I've been talking about it for 10 minutes already. So, okay, so Kyle Weeks, when he goes through for his first try, dude, when you're watching it live, you see that gap. It was like the length of that Cleary gap when Cleary went through in 2023, left open. That's what Brisbane does around the edges, man, around the edge of the ruck. Sometimes they just don't push over, man. Sometimes they get lazy. Sometimes Reece Walsh is just not in position, and you could see it. And as I saw it, I was like, you see Kyle Weeks at first receiver, you're like, right there, buddy, straight through. And I swear, I was watching it live, and I was saying, yep. Try time. You can see the gap, man. You can see the gap, like the sea's open like fucking for Moses, and he just rushes through. It was just crazy. Okay, and until this point, then the sin bin happens. Okay, sin bin in the 53rd minute. It's something that we need to talk about. It is contentious, and I would like to say about Ashley Klein, the referee. I've seen many Ashley Klein games in my life. I've seen many Ashley Klein games where, as a Warriors fan, we were robbed by Ashley Klein. I don't really like Ashley Klein as a referee. Sure, he's a great guy. Because I think he's been screwing over the Warriors for decades. For years. Since I was a wee fetus, he has been screwing over the Warriors. Fine. I gotta say, man, apart from this, like, one call, which is this call, which you'd say was an important call, I think he nailed it. And I don't even think it's a problem of... Because there were so many times it was like, surely the Raiders, for context as well, sorry if you're just joining, I just assume everyone's watched this game. The Raiders had won this game twice. They celebrated, like, full time had gone 2 times in this game, yet the Broncos won, which I have never seen in my entire life. I've never seen that ever happen. So that's just another reason that this game was just an all-timer. So you would have to say with Ashley Klein that for the calls that he has been made, it's the calls that they've been making all year, from the Jamal Fogarty kick in extra time. Well, that was just the Warriors versus the Eels a couple of weeks ago where the Warriors knocked it into a player. They've been calling that all year, and I also thought that one was worse. I thought, yeah, definitely Jet Stewart definitely touched it. Definitely it should have been called back, and it was. The actual, I'm getting ahead, but the one that he actually did get wrong, I thought Hudson Young being the initiator, being the agitator. What happened to just good old footy, man? You're not allowed a headbutt. And Ricky Stewart said it perfectly in the postgame. What happens if Hudson Young had headbutted Reece Walsh, the star boy of the competition? What do you reckon was going to happen? Yeah, he would have been sent 5 weeks, season over, you know? And the other way it happens, and then Reece Walsh goes off, flipping the bird. And, man, it's been way too long until I've mentioned that guy's name. Reece Walsh in this game was, oh, man, just phenomenal. He's been wondrous the past couple of weeks, but I didn't realize he had that in him and in such a big spot. With the Broncos coming back next week, putting Adam Reynolds, you've got a serious conversation there, man, we've been absolutely flying, giving Reece Walsh the keys to the car, and then Reynolds, if he's coming back, all he better be doing is getting that boy some space out wide, because if they try to do what they did in the middle of the year of 2 different kickers and things like that, Reece Walsh's stats, man, 40, 20s, try assists, many try assists, I think it was, 3 you'd have to... I can't even remember, man. This game was just so crazy. A try himself. So when Kyle Weeks goes the length of the field with 27 minutes left to go off a Ben Hunt error, mind you, you just thought, okay, awesome. Raiders, this is the Raiders moment. They are here. They are real this year. This is crazy. And with, just everything in the sun, man. And when it's in Canberra in the sun, it was so sick. It was so well produced by Channel 9. It looked amazing. Everything looked great. The replays were insane. The cut by Stu, the director, was fucking awesome. Part of my language. And it was just an occasion. And so when you saw KO Weeks, and also the call from Matt Thompson, I gotta be honest, he's getting better. When he bursting away, like, what a sight it was. It really was. And then after that, Ethan Strange goes over after a shoulder charge from Carrigan on Morgan Smithies, which gets him sent off. And then when Strange goes over with a little shimmy, and you would have to say they need to give the ball more to Ethan Strange. And I was thinking, who missed him? Of course it was Ben Hunt. Ben Hunt missed the tackle on Ethan Strange as well. I'm trying to tell you guys, he had an absolute shocking game. It was like one of those, he was trying to lose the game for Brisbane. He was just awful throughout this entire game. When Ethan Strange goes over, Jamal Fogarty misses the kick afterwards, which is kind of an easy kick. But at the time, you're not thinking, oh, that's going to be important, because it's 28-12 to the Raiders, and there's 14:22 left on the clock, which is 14 points. Okay, the Panthers had 17. So they had 14 points in 14 minutes, and the Panthers come back against the Broncos in 2023, which is the obvious comparison because that was the last crazy comeback in the playoffs, was 16 points with 17 minutes left. So both big, okay? Okay. Then Reece Walsh comes back onto the park and proceeds to have the craziest, I'm doing the math here. 5 minutes and 13 seconds, I believe it is, if I've done my math right, that maybe has ever existed apart from the Nathan Cleary in that grand final. If you're going to have a comeback like that, your best player just needs to just take over the game and go, I'm the best player on the park, which was what Reece Walsh absolutely did. He busts through, just absolutely gassing Jamal Fogarty on the outside, just goes through and goes around Weeks like he's not even there. And then at the time, you're like, oh, yeah, but too late there, Reece? And, he's getting clowned and everything. All right, next, left pass to Mariner, another try. Oh, okay. Well, here we go. Like 2 sets later, and you're like, oh, wow, what a try. And it's like, okay, well, now it's it's getting respectable. It's 8. And then also he's hitting the conversions from the sideline, and he's just doing everything, man. Then the 40-20, which is really the moment where you're a fan, you're like, whoa, okay, that's crazy. That led to the Shibasaki try, and then all of a sudden they're there. And then the sequence of events at the end of the game. Look, man. Okay, for context, I've been talking so far for around 726, so for like 20 minutes, I think, and only now are we getting to the end of the game. Like, this is what I've been trying to say, man. This game was freaking outrageous. Okay, so the end of the game, what happens? We're not even at the end of the game because Reece Walsh from 40 minutes out, if that wasn't enough drama, he had just done all this to bring his side back, and then he hits a goal from 40 out that would have made it a 2-point conversion, a 2-point field goal, and it hits the crossbar, which is just, stop it, just absolutely outrageous. It felt like it was in the air for an eternity. Everyone was like, oh my goodness, this game. And that wasn't even one of the biggest moments of the game. That in any other context of an NRL game would be historic on the highlights forever. But the thing about this game was that was just a small mark. Man, this is what I'm trying to say, people. This game was just out of this world. When it hits the upright, you're seeing his reaction. Everyone's like, "Oh man, that was close for the Raiders, right?" Okay, so then it comes down to at the very end, what happens is Jamal Fogarty takes a run from dummy half. These are the events leading up to the very end. Jamal Fogarty takes a run on the 5th, which is not good because he's the 7. He should always be kicking that. So now you're giving it to Ethan Strange at 6. Every meter counts, and this is actually not my point. This is from Cooper Cronk from the Matty and Cronk podcast. But Cooper Cronk was like, every meter counts. Ethan Strange puts up a kick. It goes 23-ish meters where it needed to go 38 meters. You know what I mean? That's the difference. It sets it up so that Reece Walsh at the very end actually has a side. The Raiders, in that period that the Broncos were coming back, they looked like they were trying to just wind the clock down as much as possible. They stopped playing, which I think is a great thing for them because I think it's an absolutely insane learning experience for a young squad like that because you can't be doing that. Just what the Broncos did against the Panthers. There's a lot of similarities between those games. They just stopped playing. They just decided, you know what, we've done enough. We'll just hold on to this lead and the clock will kill them. But the clock didn't kill them. Now, that last play when Reece Walsh goes for the field goal and then Zach Hosking, former Panther, comes out of the line and clips him on the leg. And then... But at this point, full time's been called. They're going to Ricky Stewart because he's always on the sideline. They're going to shots of him. They're going to the Raiders, all celebrating. The fans, they're going nuts. Hold on a second. The bunker. Now, all these calls that happen towards the very end is not a result of the bunker being wrong. It's about the bunker's rules being vigilant and being cool. This is the game now. So you can't really, because obviously if full time's been called, it should be full time. But because the bunker goes, oh, wait a second, he's hit the leg of Reece Walsh because Reece Walsh stayed down afterwards. Very smart play, by the way, because he ended up being fine. But he did get clipped on the legs, and that is a penalty, whether you like it or not. Now, what is a crazy thing that I didn't even realize. I've been watching this game my entire life. I did not know that this was a rule. Was that if there's a penalty on the kicker and the kick is charged down, because usually the penalty is from where the ball would land, but because it's charged down, it's a penalty 10 meters in front. And when you're down by 2 and you have the most easy guaranteed 2 points on the park, like, how is that a rule? I have not heard that. Like, they were just saying it on the broadcast. It reminded me a lot of the America's Cup when New Zealand was up. I think it was 8-1, and it was 1st to 9, and we were winning a race, and then we were going around the last corner, and then all of a sudden the commentators were saying, oh, they've got to be careful of this time penalty of 45 minutes. That's how long a race can take. And we're all like, what do you mean? Wait, like what? What? And that's how I was feeling. I was like, wait, they get a penalty 10 meters in front, even though he was 40 meters out hard left. How does that make sense, man? So make it make sense. This game didn't make sense because it was just outrageous. It was insane. Reece Walsh kicks the goal. Awesome. Okay, extra time. Golden point. There's a lot of things that happen in Golden Point. It was a crazy 10 minutes. I would say there was a lot of things that the Raiders did right and wrong. So I don't want to call out. I want to call out a couple of plays. Hudson Young was insane. He did a couple of charge downs on field goals. It was one of those back and forths of, my God, this is just crazy. There was one play though where at the very end of the game in the 89th minute, they try to spin it left, and that at that point, don't go for the try because Mariner got a game-saving intercept. Just go for the field goal. And I felt like the Raiders were panicking a lot. And I thought Jamal Fogarty would step up a little bit more than he did, because I thought in this game there was, has been a concern in the past, of Jamal Fogarty's ceiling as a 7, because that game really required a 7 to come through with some game management. And who the hell would have thought that the 7 to come through, and the most, like, I don't want to say underwhelming, I would just say like career summary of the knight in shining armor, Ben Hunt, out of all people, hits the field goal to send the Broncos into the semis. Like, okay, so to explain this in context, the fact that it went off the post and then in as well, it was like, of course it did, because this game was just so outlandish. It was just like, it deserved a heart in your gut kind of moment. It kind of sums up Ben Hunt's career in a certain way, doesn't it? Of, he's either killing you, that whole game summed it up. He's either winning you the game or he's killing you the game. He's never quiet. He's never a non-factor in a game. He's always, like, the fact that throughout that game, man, his kicking game was bad. He had made multiple errors that led to tries. He was just he had that one good pass, which I mentioned, and then I can't actually remember another thing. I remember always thinking, like, man, they've just got to get it to Reece Walsh. Like, just somehow, like, this guy just doesn't have it. And then for him to step up in the biggest moment, like, kudos to him, man. Kudos to him. Like, to hit a field goal 40 meters out off the post, just insane. There are a couple of players who you need to give a shout out to, man, because Tony Staggs, as usual, just massive for the Broncos, just huge. This guy, I've always been really high on him. Billy Walters. He's moved to 6. He was a dummy half throughout the year. I thought this guy got a lot of crap because his dad was the old coach. He's really stood up and shone. It's very unfortunate now that they think he's got an ACL. So the Broncos going forward are really going to have to decide what they're going to do. Whether they put Hunt at 6 or and with Reynolds coming back at 7, which I assume they will do. Corey Pakes goes into 9, and then Reece Walsh is obviously a fullback. There's a bunch of different things like that, but I thought Walters was immense throughout this game. His running style, I thought his kicking game was great. I thought just everything he did on defense specifically, he's always been... So whenever I work on a Broncos game, I always try to cut a little Billy Walters pack, and I always get crap from it because they're like, you'll never use it, you're just wasting your time. But I'm like, this guy's good, man. This guy has always been good. I know he's not a star. I know he's not that dude. I'm big in the Billy Walters camp of, I think he's a very impactful player, and I think they're going to miss him a lot with an ACL. And so Carrigan as well when he came back. Payne Haas, like, that's the other thing. I've only just mentioned this guy but it was an all-time sports movie moment of the best player. He gets injured, he looks down and out, and then all of a sudden he's making huge carries in extra time. Like, this game, this fucking game, man. Like, I'm sorry to swear, but it's just baffling the amount of stuff that went down. That was just insanity. And I think I've just summarized just the game, and we've got some things to talk about for it. But I really would like to make that as my case. That is the best game ever played on planet Earth.